started self-publishing, build up an audience, and then could get traditional contracts, or sometimes it goes the other way around. But the point is, they're working this hard, and that's why they're successful. And if you average the numbers out, it's not going to look as good because you're going to get a lot of people who've just uploaded a book and sat back to see what happens, which, is going to be nothing because books almost never sell themselves. But if you focused on just people who are taking it seriously, professionally, working hard, reading up, listening to podcasts like this one, I think you would get a far rosier picture. Here's my bottom line message for Red Sneaker writers. At worst, I think this means that most writers can't get away with just writing. And that too is not new. For a long time now, probably since the dawn of writing, most writers have done other things. They've had a side job, they taught at the local community college or whatever, and that is not necessarily such a tragedy. It took me a long time because I was fortunate enough to find success right off the bat with my writing. It took me a while to figure it out that the path to the happiest life was not necessarily to spend all day sitting at home staring at a screen. It's actually beneficial to get out and do other things and mingle with other people. And I think that's a large part of why many writers not only write, but teach or speak in public or whatever. Sure, money's a factor, but it's not the only factor. I know my writing has improved as a result of teaching, which forced me to focus on style and storytelling. Plus, I just get ideas from interacting with other people. I love going to conferences and speaking. I love doing this podcast, which forces me to interview people. Sad truth about many writers is a very friendly community, but if we didn't have these conferences and get-togethers, we might never see each other. So I look forward to opportunities that force me to get out of my shell and interact with the world a little bit. So I guess what I'm saying here is if in the future writing is not the only thing you do, that's not such a tragedy. If you're writing for the right reasons. If you got into writing because you thought, woohoo, now I'll never have to have a real job, or you were just looking for money, maybe it wasn't the best choice. But I think that's not why most people get into writing. I think most people start writing because they love books and they love writers and they want to participate. They want to be a part of this great exchange of ideas. I know when I was young, the greatest thing that I could imagine would be to see my name on the spine of a book. Actually, I still get kind of a charge out of that. That hasn't really changed. If you're writing because you've got something to say and you want other people to hear it, then you're writing for the right reasons. And sure, we've all got to pay the bills, and you will. But writing is never wasted if you're doing it for the right reasons. My interview for this episode is with Jim Kukral. He's an award-winning blogger, speaker, entrepreneur, and expert on online marketing. He spent about 15 years working with small businesses and large companies like FedEx, Sherwin-Williams, Ernst & Young. Major Fortune 500 companies, helping them build their online marketing program. And now he's got some help for authors like you and me. He was a player in the Author Marketing Club, which I bet some of you are already a member of. And now he started a new program called SmarterAuthors.com, which looks to me really interesting. Here's what he had to say. Jim, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here.
All right. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone who wants to write, what would it be?
It's so hard to narrow that down to one thing. But I'll try. All right.
I'd let you have two if you really pushed.
Well, I'll narrow it down to one thing, which is treat it like a business. And, the romantic dream of writing one book and a publisher sending a limo and a contract and giving you $1 million, like that doesn't exist. Business of writing and selling books, fiction or nonfiction today, is writing, multiple books in a right to market strategy and treating it as a business and marketing it as a business. And once you get your head around that romantic dream isn't going to happen to you, you can have success as an author.
I think that's terrific advice. How do you deal with people who are sort of, locked in the old school? They've just got it fixed in their heads that unless they have a traditional publisher, some corporate New York entity, they're not really an author.
Well, it's you shouldn't even try to argue. If that's in your head and you believe that, I've been in sales long enough. You trying to change someone's mind is not the best path to having success in sales. So, but if that's in your head and you're stuck there, there's nothing I can do for you. But all you got to do is go around and look at podcasts like this and programs, and subscribe to the 20 Books to 50K group on Facebook, and look and see how Mark Dawson just posted a screenshot of his book report for last month, which was $130,000 in book sales
for 1 month.
For 1 month, right?
Wow.
Or other people who post 10,000 or 1,000, whatever. It's a business, and the people who are doing it self-publishing and who are doing it right and putting the effort in are doing very, very well.
What are the problems you think many or most writers are facing, today, trying to function in today's book world?
Well, that first problem is not writing to market.
Mm-hmm. Meaning what?
Well, writing to market, as Chris Fox wrote a book called Write to Market, is basically writing where there are readers. Okay. So I'll give you a good example. Somebody came to me for my SmarterAuthors program and said, hey, I'm writing a book about this genre. And we did some research. We pulled up KDP Rocket and we looked, and I'm like, well, okay, let's look at the top 20 books in that genre. And the top 20 books each were only selling like $25 a month. And in the top 20, right? So it's like, why would you spend 6 months of your life or 3 months of your life writing a book in a genre where people aren't buying books? Okay.
I suppose somebody could argue, well, there's an opening here. There's a big untapped place for a really good book.
Yeah, you could argue that. You could also, that goes back to the romantic dream. I'm going to change the system. I'm going to be the outlier, right? And that does happen, but it happens to 1 in every 10 million people, right? Like creating a new genre, right? Or having a book take off in a genre that is not popular already is a very low margin win for you. So treating it like a business and writing to market, and on top of writing to market, having a cover to market, which I talk a lot about, the main things that you need to do to have success, besides having a great book that's edited well, is, having a great cover that's to market. I mean, if readers go to Amazon or wherever they go to look at books, and if they buy books in that category, they're looking for book covers that mimic the other ones that are out there. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'll just write something different, or I'll make a cover that's totally different and it'll stand out. That doesn't work, right? People, if you go look, just for example, just go to post-apocalyptic in Amazon and do a search for that, and you'll see that on the top, 50 covers, they all mimic the same type of style and look and imagery and colors and things like that. I wonder why. Because that's what people are buying. So that's what people really need to get their head around. And this is a business, and you need to prepare content in a manner that readers want to purchase.
I suppose somebody could go into that saying, look, all these other post-apocalyptic books look all the same. I'm going to try something different, but not necessarily the path to success.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does happen every once in a while, but look, I've been building online businesses and websites for over 20 years. I've been at thousands of sales calls. The best path to converting and being successful, creating content, whatever, any business is, giving people what they want and what they're used to. So again, back to this romantic dream, that I'm going to do something different and I'm going to be something totally different and everyone's going to flock to me. It's a good idea, but it rarely ever works unless you're really disrupting a marketplace. And if you're writing a book on romance or post-apocalyptic or whatever, you're not disrupting anything by having a different cover, right?
And it seems to me that on those rare occasions when somebody really does, like you were saying, create a new genre, the Da Vinci Code, perhaps arguably, it's not really that the author was setting out to break the ceiling or create. It just wrote a book that turned out to be really popular, and that's what happened.
Well, yeah, you saw that with adult coloring books a couple of years ago. In 2018, a big genre that came out of nowhere was reverse harem, right? So this is an actual real genre that's like a huge seller right now. So it does happen.
What you've already touched on some of this, but tell me what you consider the keys to success in today's writing and publishing world.
Well, I have a program called SmarterAuthors, and here's what we focus on.
Great program. Yeah, go ahead.
The basic things that 99% of authors get wrong are the title, the cover, the description, the keywords, and the categories. So Amazon is the number one converting sales page in the history of the world, right? The history of the internet. People go and they buy things there, but you still need to optimize that page. So I see way too many authors make the mistakes in not optimizing their Amazon page. A professional selling book description is so important. Not one that talks about you, not one that talks about, it's got to sell the story. And the hard part about that is people are good at writing whatever kind of books they write, but they're really bad at writing sales copy.
It's harder and very different.
Oh, and it's especially hard to do it for yourself. I've been doing it for over 20 years. And it's very difficult for me to write my own sales copy. So I hire people to write mine. It's difficult.
That's interesting. Yeah, but I completely agree with you. It's a whole different skill and a tough one.
Right. So a great book description on your Amazon sales page, a great cover to market strategy. It's very simple for you to do alone. Go to your genre, do a search, and look for the top 50, 25 books that are selling, and just look at the themes, right? I want to just go back a little bit to this. I'm a marketer. I started out as a graphic designer 20 years ago, right? But I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't that great of a designer. What I'm good at is assembling all the pieces and looking what needs to go where, and then giving it to a designer to do. And I always tell people, never let a graphic designer design your website or your book cover. You let a marketer put it together. And here's why. Because the marketer is going to go, here's what it needs to look like. Here's what elements need to be on it. Here's why. And then you hand that off to a designer and say, make it look pretty, right? And that's the mindset that you have to have. So the cover, the description, categories, man, authors really mess this up. I mean, it's not their fault, because when you go into Amazon and you upload a book, they give you those silly two categories you're allowed to put your book in, and they're usually not where you want to be. And then Amazon lumps you and throws you in categories wherever people are finding you or buying your book. Well, people don't realize that you can actually tell Amazon you want to be in specific categories. So like you could say, email Amazon and say, here's 10 categories. So what you need to do is go out and find the categories that makes most sense for you. And the biggest mistake I see is, number one, people don't know they can do that. Number two, they don't look for categories where they actually have a shot in. They'll say, oh, well, I write women's historical fiction. Well, I just want to be in the top level category. Well, guess what? You're never going to rank well, probably never going to rank really well in that category. What really successful authors and smarter authors are doing now is they're going out and finding these subcategories where they'll do better. I'll give you a great example. I had a client who was writing a book about the Holocaust, and we were doing research to determine what category they should be in. Of course, the obvious ones came up. But what we found was that that one of